Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about rendering and re-rendering inside of our functional components. And specifically, we're going to talk about how hooks, and more specifically, the useState hook fits inside all of this. To begin with, I have console logged out the string render on line 8 at the very top of our functional component, and we're still continuing to log out our search field value. What I want you to think about is whenever right now, inside of our application, let's clear this. When I refresh, we see render and then we see the empty string. Whenever I type anything, you'll notice that render is getting called first and then the string value is being called. What this means is that React is running this entire function every single time it needs to re-render a component that is a functional component. This is a very important thing. Previously, inside of our class components, whenever there were mounting and update cycles, render would get run. And update cycles ran whenever props changed or whenever state updated. The only thing that ran, though, was whatever code was inside of the render method. With functional components, we don't have a render method. This entire functional component you can kind of see as the same thing as the render method. Essentially, whenever React has determined that a functional component needs to render or re-render, it will just run the entire function top to bottom. The way that it determines whether or not a functional component needs to update is the same as a class component. Whenever the props change, which is the arguments inside of a function that we have not worked with yet, but we will soon, but just remember that whenever props change, the whole function gets run. So React is determining, I need to re-render the component. Let me run the entire functional component. Similarly, whenever state changes, it will also rerun this entire functional component. That is the only way React knows there's probably new UI. How do I determine what that new UI is going to be? Let me just rerun the entire function so that whatever gets returned from this function is going to have the latest variables, latest props, latest state values, so that I know what the new UI will look like based on the returned JSX from this function. This is the thing to remember about functional components. You cannot just run part of this function. This whole function needs to rerun every single time. So what about useState and this hook? The thing about useState is that you are getting back this state value. And under the hood, what React does is React will actually check whether or not this state value is different. Only when through that hard equality, it notices that there are different values, only then will React actually rerun this value. So currently, every time our event changes, the state value is updating because we're either typing new characters into the string or we're removing characters from the string. We saw that. However, if I were to copy search field and just call set search field instead and save this, every time we type into this search box, I don't care about what the string you're giving me back is. I just want you to set the value of search field to the current search field value. If we do this and we refresh, what we'll see is that despite the fact that I'm typing in these characters, we're not seeing any of the console logs get fired. And the reason for that is because React is calling our setter function, our set search field, but it's just not giving it a different value. So React is smart enough to know, if this state value is the same value, then don't rerun this function. And what this tells us, it's not actually set search field that triggers a re-rendering of a component. It's actually when the state value changes. In the context of our current useState, if the current string value of our state is the same as the new string value coming in, literally the string values are the exact same, then we will not re-render, meaning that we will not run this function from top to bottom again. We can easily test this. Let's say I initialize the initial state value as a string that contains the letter A. Let's update so that instead of passing the search field in, we're passing back in the string value that we're getting from the event of our search box. Remember, our search box's internal string state is completely separate from our useState, meaning that whatever this state value is does not actually affect the value that our search box has inside of it. The way that we can easily see this is that with that initialization, the initial string value is A, but our search box is an empty string. Of course it is, because we're not actually taking our state value and putting it into the search box. It's the other way. We're taking out whatever value is being typed into the search box, and we're trying to remedy it against what we have in our app. So here, what should happen is that when I type the letter A, we should see no console logs because our current state value is A. So if I type A, we're going to get the letter A string, and it's going to say, oh, the value of the string you typed in is the same value as what I have inside of my state. So our function is not going to rerun. And that's what we see. We just typed in A, nothing happened. But if I keep typing it in, then we see we're now re-rendering the component because the string value is now different than what we have inside of our internal state. And now everything works as expected. So that's the thing to understand about the way that React determines using state inside of your functional component, whether or not it needs to re-render. We'll talk more about this as we build out our application with the different hooks and some more complex cases when putting this kind of stuff together. But this is really the most important difference about functional components and class components. You need to stop thinking about functional components and life cycles and start seeing it instead as when does React determine that I need to rerun my entire functional component? That's really the difference. So with that, let's move on to completely changing the remainder of our class app into this functional component.